My name is Carlos Cepeda, and I'm a coordinator of recruitment for this year's 12th annual UC Davis Pre-Medical and Pre-Health Professions National Conference. I would like to thank the AAMC for their sponsorship of this event and allowing it to be viewed online worldwide. We have gathered a series of questions submitted by pre-medical students through our online website, forums, and social media. If you would like any questions to be addressed during the panel, please submit your questions through Facebook and Twitter with the hashtag UCDPHSA14, and your questions may be integrated live into the panel. I would now like to have each panelist, starting with the panelist to my right, introduce their names and the institutions they attend.
My name is Rohit Nalamasu, currently a second-year osteopathic medical student at Touro University, California.
My name is Ravi Uppal. I'm a second-year medical student at the Nova Southeastern University College of Osteopathic Medicine.
Hi, my name is Anupam Mittal. I'm a second-year osteopathic medical student at Touro University, California.
Hello, everyone. I'm Angad Oberoi, and like Anupam and Rohit, I'm a second-year medical student at Touro University.
So our first question is, why did you choose to go into medicine? And we'll just go down the line.
I think very few professions give you the satisfaction of impacting someone's life directly. And that was something I always wanted for myself when choosing a future career path. And I think that being able to see someone consistently and being able to see the impact you have on a person was one of the major reasons why I chose to go into medicine.
Yeah, similarly for me, this was a thing that I could see myself doing for the rest of my life, something that I enjoy. There's nothing more like rewarding and fulfilling, to, like in my opinion, than medicine, giving back to people. In addition, like I really enjoy the sciences, and this allows, this profession will, throughout your life, you're always learning, continually being like stimulated academically. So that's another thing that appealed to me.
I was always interested in science. It was always my big thing. I wanted to do something related to science, but it was kind of a natural progression towards medicine. Someone told me once, who was a very non-traditional student, they had taken many years off before starting medical school. They were in another profession, and they said, the reason I changed was medicine is an inherently selfless career. And like I said before, I don't think you can really get that in any other career, and I think that was just something I think I would want to do with my life for the rest of my life.
Not to repeat what they said, I think I have a very similar perspective, but one thing I want to add is medicine kind of gives you a diversity in the sense you see so many people from different walks of life on a daily basis, and that's what I wanted to do. I didn't want to do the same thing again and again or see the same person again and again, and you get so close and intimate with every patient. In no other setting will someone trust you so much so quickly. Within a couple of minutes, that person has pretty much given you their life. And they're trusting you with everything you do clinically. And I think that's also a great responsibility, But at the same time, there's no other profession that gives you that level of responsibility and that level of diversity on a daily basis. And that was it for me. That really made me choose medicine.
So can you describe the path through the application process, from the primaries to the secondaries to the interview?
Rigorous. It's very complicated, and unfortunately, it's not as streamlined as it should be. You have to fill a primary application for AACOMAS for DO schools, and then AMCAS for MD schools. And then from there, I guess we're all going to answer this, so if you want to take the secondaries.
Okay. So that was the primary application. So again, it's one application for all the DO schools, one application for all the MD schools. And then you get a secondary application, which is from each individual school. And that it depends on the different schools. Some schools will require additional essays, some won't. And those also are associated with their own fee. So a big thing I will talk about is like plan financially to apply, because the primary fees, they add up really quick when you're applying to, multiple schools, and then secondary fees, again, like it'll be like $50 to $150 depending on the school.
The next step after that would ideally, hopefully for all of you, be interviews. So if they like your secondary, each school will send you an interview application or interview request, and you either drive or fly to whichever school and you'll get an interview. And for the most part, most schools, if they give you an interview, they pretty much want you. And what I would think is at that interview process, you just got to be yourself, be normal, show that you can answer their questions, and yeah, that's pretty much it.
And then following the interview, hopefully you all will be accepted. But unfortunately, it's not a perfect world, and we can't accept everyone. But you will either be accepted, waitlisted, or rejected. Those are the three decisions that can follow an interview. And I think for many people, this is the toughest, because a waitlist kind of puts you in middle ground. And you can't really plan for the future at that point, because you don't know if you're going to get off the wait list. Some years, schools will take a lot of people off the wait list. Some years, they'll take very few. And this is where it can get challenging, but you just have to pace yourself and stick with it. And then hopefully you'll get into your first choice, and you'll be off a medical student at that point.
So our next question is, as an undergrad, what type of extracurricular activities did you get involved with that helped prepare you for a career in medicine?
As an undergrad, I went to UC San Diego for my undergrad, and I was involved in, I think, something a little bit interesting. I, with a friend of mine, did a lot of entrepreneurship. So I was a bioengineering major, and so I tried to do a lot more engineering type projects, and we got to see fruition in some of those in some of these entrepreneurship competitions.
And like this is a great example of like, you don't have to follow like some sort of checklist. You don't have to do everything med related or what so and so did to get into medical school. Main thing with an extracurricular is find something that you're interested in, you're passionate about, and own it. Do it well. All right. You don't need to do like 20 different things or, you know, things that other people tell you. Just find what you're interested in, and you'll be good at it, and you'll do it well. So like, you know, it doesn't. You just got to find what works for you.
I think to echo what he said, you really got to find one or two things that you like and just stick with it. You don't have to do a lot of things. For me personally, I kind of went the traditional route, almost unoriginally so. I started with some like bench work research, but then I moved on to some clinical research, and I thought that was probably one of my best extracurricular activities, because that really showed me beyond just what research was, it's how does the clinical setting actually work. And I was working with medical students and residents in the clinical setting, so it was, what is my life going to be like actually as a student and as a resident in this field. So I thought that was really helpful.
I went to Davis, so I had the advantage of having the UC Davis Medical Center, which a lot of UCs have a medical center nearby. And I believe there's a shuttle that still goes from the silo to the med center on a regular basis. And there are a lot of doctors who are very open to having you come in and work with them and shadow them and you know, have them really describe what they do on a daily basis. So for me, that was the most important thing. And I really want to second what Ravi said. It's not that you have to cure cancer or cure Ebola right now, for the matter. You just have to really find something you really love. Because when you find that thing, it's going to be easier to spend those long hours or show the commitment or dedication because you love it. I know it's cliche, I know everyone says that, but really find something you're interested in and own it.
So the next question has two parts. How many schools did you apply to, and what were you looking for in the schools you applied to?
My first round of applications, I applied to quite a few schools. I did my master's at Touro University of California, and my second round of interviews, I only applied to one. I actually, when I applied, I only applied only to DO schools, because what I'm interested in eventually is a specific form of medicine, physical medicine rehab. But I think that you can basically, it all depends on your application. If you feel like a strong applicant, you can pick down, narrow it down to just a few schools that you're really interested in. I, for example, really loved how close I am to my family. And so I'm only an hour away from my family now. So in that way, Touro was my first choice because of a strong support system. But of course, that changes for everyone.
Yeah. So it depends a lot on like how competitive an applicant you are. But still, even if you're a super competitive applicant, that doesn't mean just, you know, apply to a few schools. You still want to have a good broad range, because again, with medical schools, there's always a range. They look for different things. You might look great on paper, but that doesn't always guarantee you an acceptance. So it's a numbers game. So play the numbers. You know, I would say, you know, around 10 schools, like minimum, is probably a good number just to be safe. For myself, I applied to, I think, about 20 schools. And for me, I applied like broadly, different parts of the country. I just looked at school mission statements, which ones I fit well into, which ones were in locations that were desirable to me. I didn't want to be in like a really rural area or anything. That was a factor for me. Some people wouldn't care as much. And again, like, you know, geography, like, if your family support system is like something you really need, then you'll be geographically limited, and you should apply to those places. And don't apply to a school that if you're only accepted there, that you wouldn't go there. So that's the biggest advice. If you go to every school you apply to, make sure that if you were accepted and that was your only acceptance, you would be going there and you'd be happy.
Just to kind of go off what they said, I think it kind of depends on the applicant, each applicant. I've seen a lot of people that are very highly competitive, but like was said by Ravi, a good score does not guarantee you an interview by any means at all. In fact, quite the opposite sometimes. So I think applying broadly, if you are able to financially, and in whatever case, that's a good idea. I myself applied to a lot of schools, way more than 20, but my family's from California, so I wanted to stay in California, so that was a big thing for me. So Touro University was the California school I got into, so that was why I picked it.
I kind of have a similar story, not much more to say, but I applied to about 15 to 20 schools. And I think in addition, for me, location was the biggest thing. So that's how I kind of differentiated where I was applying. But more than that, it was where I would feel myself comfortable and happy. Because do remember, you're going to spend 4 years, maybe more, at this location. And it will have some of the best times and maybe some of the worst times of your life. So you want to be someplace where you can be happy and comfortable. And that was what was important for me at the interview, was talking to students, talking to faculty, and really trying to see what was important. And do I see myself as comfortable and happy in that setting? And that's what I really used to figure out where I wanted to go.
Thank you. So our next question is, what do you feel is the best way to prepare for your interview?
Each university is different, so a lot of research on the university, their mission statements, like Ravi had said earlier, is important. There are a lot of resources online, a bunch of interview questions, but really, I think what's most important is know yourself, know why you're here, know why you want to be a physician, and know your application.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing. Know your application, know yourself, know why you want to go into medicine. And you're applying to medical school, you've done all these things. Like, of course, you know why you want to go to medicine, but sometimes it's hard to explain that to someone without sounding like cliche. So you really need to practice how do you explain to someone why you're passionate about medicine, why you're interested in that. That's probably the biggest thing. And be honest. Don't just say something because you think that's what the interviewer wants to hear. They interview so many people, they can see through it when you're real, or when you're just saying something to appease them. So.
And I think in addition to what's already been said, practice interviewing with someone who doesn't know you. It's very easy to have your best friend interview you, and your best friend knows you. They're your best friend for a reason. So they're not going to get a very good picture of you in a more unbiased, objective setting. If you have someone kind of practice interview you who you don't know, it's a very good critique to ask them after the interview, what do you think of me? What picture do you have? Because your interviewer will have a very similar picture. So I would say get someone who doesn't know you very well and have them interview you in addition to what's already been said.
So who did you get your letters of recommendation from, and how did you form those relationships?
I got my letter of recommendations from a couple of school professors, a bunch of research professors I had worked with, and specifically one DO up in Northwestern. I did a lot of emailing. When I found something that I was interested in, I just became really proactive, would email a lot of professors until one of them would email me back. It's just the way it is. Some of it's connections and some of it's just pure hard diligence. But I think the bright side is that when you find something that you want to work on and you get the chance to work on it, it just opens so many doors.
Yeah, mine were similar. Some professors, the person I did research with, and then also a physician that I shadowed, a DO physician that I shadowed. But the biggest thing, I know it can be intimidating, especially when you go to a big public university. Like, there's 500 people in the class. Like, how's this professor going to remember me? It's hard. You just need to push yourself a little bit outside your comfort zone. Be comfortable, like, emailing them or going to their office hours and talking to them and, showing yourself. It's tough. It's just one of those things you just have to do. And try and, go talk to your professors, especially if you have the same professor for multiple courses. You can, talk to them about that, and you build, like, relationship over time.
Just like what he said, I went to the same kind of big public school, so that had that same problem. But you have to keep in mind that for all of you who's watching, that these professors, they know what you're asking, they know what you need. They have students year after year asking the same thing, so you just got to put yourself forward, and then they'll help you with that. I got some basic sciences, I got some from my research professors that I worked with, and then lucky enough to have some family friends who are physicians, so I shadowed them, I got letters from them, so that was helpful.
My letters mainly came from the doctors I worked with at the Davis Medical Center, and the professors from Davis. I think one thing I want to emphasize is they know what you're coming from. They don't expect you to become best friends with them in 1 quarter. They've done this for many years. They understand it's difficult to come to office hours or to form a relationship within 1 quarter, and trust that. Having said that, don't just sit in the back of the classroom and hope that, oh, I got an A in this class, so yeah, totally, you'll write me a letter. You have to take the initiative to show up to office hours and make yourself known. And I think that's the best way to go around getting a letter.
I think one other thing to keep in mind is that, let's say you're talking to some professor and you form a relationship. Before, you don't want to just ask them, can you write me a letter of recommendation? You want to ask, because they, like you said, you might get an A and they might write you a bad letter of rec. So, I mean, one thing to keep in mind is when you say, can you write me a strong letter of recommendation? So that's the kind of key word right there, strong, is what's going to help with that as well.
How do you feel medical school has lived up to your expectations?
It's hard, but it teaches you quite a bit. I think it's definitely what I expected in terms of my workload, but what I didn't expect is how you end up accommodating it. For example, I've gotten a lot better at time management and other aspects where you become accustomed to the workload and you work with it.
Yeah, that's the big thing. It can be intimidating at first. You're like, how am I going to learn all this information? How am I gonna remember it on test day? But trust me, you're a lot smarter than you think you are. Your body can do a lot more than you can imagine. Again, like, time management is a big thing that I've learned, throughout my first year, and I'm still, like, working on it and getting better at managing my time, being more efficient. And, like, there'll be some weeks when you have a lot of tests where, you might not have a life, but you still have some sort of life in medical school. You still have a social life. I still have time to go to the gym, play basketball. I still watch some TV here and there. You still have time for a life, not as much as you prefer, but you still manage. And then also in medical school, you'll build some of, like, the closest relationships ever, because you're not going through it alone. You have all your classmates. You all have the same classes, the same schedules. You see them every day. You guys are going through this together, so you really build, like, strong bonds. You bring, you build a great support system around you.
Echoing what they said, time management is probably the most important thing. One of the things I learned is that when you have to learn to study efficiently as part of time management. So when you're ready to study, you study. But if you're not ready to study, then don't, because it's just not going to sink in. So it's really learning how you learn is a very crucial part in that.
It's very hard. It's tough, make no mistake. It's probably the toughest 4 years of your life in some sense, but at the same time, like Ravi said, you'll be surprised by how well your body can adapt and accommodate. I literally thought my brain was going to explode, and there was no way I could fit all this information in my head, but somehow I did. I'm alive. I'm here. So you'll be surprised by how well you do accommodate, and it's something you just have to stick with. The initial part can be very difficult, adapting to this sort of pace, but just stick with it and have faith in yourself. And very quickly, you'll realize, like Anupam said, how do I study efficiently? When do I study? What do I study? And that's the trick. Once you get that balance going, it's very manageable.
Just kind of building off that, what types of studying techniques have you found to be really helpful?
I think it varies for every person. Like Angad said, everyone finds how they study. For me, one technique that I like using is I found I'm a very visual learner. So I will take lectures and I will basically make pictures out of them. And so, like, for example, we just had an opioid lecture, and so I just have little people drawn on all over my notebook with, like, a sad face or a smiley face and, like, little arrows to point where pain would be and stuff like that. So I think it's really variable. There's a lot of different techniques that people use, and I think a lot of it's just finding out how you study.
Yeah, so the biggest thing, it varies from person to person. For me, what I found was, like, my school does not have mandatory lectures. They, like, record all of them. And so I found I would do better by not going to class, by watching the lectures at my own pace, because I guess I zone out too much, or I'm not too functional at 8 a.m. I study much better at night. So I watch the recordings at my own pace, and you know, I can pause, rewind, I can speed it up if the professor speaks too slow for me and I'm zoning out, things like that. And that won't work for every person. Some, you know, some people, if they don't go to class, they're not going to learn that way. They can't stare into a computer screen and learn that way, or like they're not disciplined enough to make sure that, you know, if they're skipping class, that they're, you know, watching on the recording. So it depends from person to person, and it's just something you just have to be adaptable and be willing to try different things. Like in undergrad, I went here at UC Davis. I went to every single class. I would never miss a class. They'd never take attendance, but I would go. But you just have to figure out different things and be willing to change what you usually do.
I think to build on that, it's that you need to try different things, but as especially the first years which are in the classroom, like your study methods will change from week to week, from month to month, depending on what subject you're studying. One thing I found that was pretty helpful and to be constant throughout is if you can speak it to someone and explain it to someone, then you know it, because it's so easy to read something, a PowerPoint, a lecture, a book, and say, oh, I understand that, but you'd be surprised how many times you try and say that to someone and you don't actually know it. So even if you like studying alone, find someone at some point you can sit and work with and try and bounce ideas off of and explanations off of, to help with that.
And I think, like it's already been said, there's no cookie cutter formula or recipe that do this, and you'll succeed in medical school. Some people like group studying, some people don't. Some people like watching lectures, some people don't. Some people like reading, some people don't. So it's finding what works for you. And even at this stage of the time, I'm still finding new things. It's not like, oh, okay, I've reached second year, cool. I totally know what to do and I'm perfect now in terms of studying. One thing I really want to emphasize is talk to the second and third years at your school, because they've just taken all those classes. They know how professors test, they know how professors teach, and they can be really big help, because they'll say, yeah, for this professor, this worked well for me, so that's a good launching pad or launching board for you guys where you don't know what to do at first. So get in touch with the second and third years at your school where you end up and ask them what they did when they were in your shoes, and they typically have really good advice for you.
So the next question is, can you describe the population of your class in terms of traditional versus non-traditional students?
Being a DO school, I think we have a larger amount of non-traditional students compared to MD schools. As for like demographically, I don't think I could really put a number on it, but yeah, I think it's difficult. I think after a year and a half, it's just hard to tell. But if I had to, I would say probably around like 25, 30% non-traditional students.
It's hard for me to put a number on it too, but I guess they're around the same, like 25 to 30%, like about a quarter of the class is non-traditional. We have a really broad range. We have, you know, I have a classmate who has a daughter who's in high school, so you know he's non-traditional. He's older. We have a lot of people that were in the military. They served in the military, and you know, this is kind of like a second career, so they're like in a different stage in their lives. At the same time, I know a first year, like I'm a second year, and a first year there's like a 19-year-old in the first year class, which it just puzzles me at, you know, but you know, he's there, so that, you know, there's a big range. I think the average age in our class is probably around like 25, or yeah, 25, I would guess, like 25, 26. So most people the average student took, you know, a year or two off in my class.
Rohit, Angad, and I go to the same school, so yeah, like you said, I think we have a fair amount of non-traditional students, but that's what's kind of fun sometimes. You meet a lot of different people from a lot of different walks of life, and a lot of these, so like we're all coming straight out of undergrad pretty much, and either none or 1 year off, but having someone who's older in their like 30s can really give you a different perspective on how to deal with certain things. A lot of people have a lot of different life experience, so I think it's kind of cool having a lot of non-traditional students in our school.
Yeah, I mean, I have not much more to say, but I would say, yeah, I think 25 to 30% is about the number. And like Anupam said, it's cool seeing someone. We have someone who's done a PhD, and I don't understand how he's in school still after having done a PhD. That is not something I can comprehend. But it's very cool because you see how much dedication they have and all that they're going through, yet they're still doing it. So in some sense, it becomes very inspirational for your own self to see that diversity amongst traditional and non-traditional, and how you can, use that for yourself in some sense.
And I think it's a little interesting because in undergrad, I would be a little, like, not obsessed, but the age gap mattered a lot more. But as soon as I started medical school, and now in the second year, it stops mattering at all. Students are students, teachers are teachers. For example, I'm in the same group as one of our students that has a PhD, and we just call him student doctor. Like, it's just interesting that the age stops mattering because you're all in this together.
If you could be an undergraduate student again, what would you do differently?
I would get much more involved in local clinics. I would, yeah, I think that's the biggest thing I would do. I didn't take full advantage. I went to UC San Diego, and I didn't take full advantage of the UC San Diego Medical Center. Among classes and other things, I could have been better at time management and put out a little more space for that, because we're experiencing it now in medical school, going to these clinics and seeing patients, and it's awesome. And I wish that I had started that earlier.
If I could go back, I'd go back in time and give myself a chill pill, because I think you guys can probably relate. As like a pre-med, you're just always so like scared and neurotic, and you hear other people did all these things, and you're like, wow, like how am I gonna get in? It's so competitive, and you hear about people not getting in. It's scary. It's definitely scary. It's definitely tough. But if you spend all your time worrying, you're not being you're not being productive there. So relax a little. Make sure you don't forget the important things. There's no rush to get into medical school. Take your time. Enjoy your time. Do things that you like. And just take advantage of I look back and I'm like, wow, an undergrad has so much free time. I should have used it better. Maybe like I still had a social life, but I could have had a better one, and other things, and just focus on other things. So I guess still have fun, have hobbies.
Yeah, I went to UC Irvine, and I came straight out of undergrad to medical school. So actually, I don't think I would go back. I think first 2 years, as hard as it is, it's far more enjoyable now. But I think if I had to go back, I think I'd just have a little bit more fun, and like Ravi said, just be a little bit less worried about it, because in the end, whatever happens, wherever you end up is going to work. I was really kind of set on not taking a year off, and part of me wishes I had, but to give me some more time to kind of take that MCAT a little more slowly and whatnot. But I did it, and it is what it is, so it's all good.
So when I was an undergrad, I had a medical student tell me that what I was going through in the application process was the toughest. And I thought he was lying. And I was like, there's no way. You're telling me medical school is easier than the application process? Like, you're full of it. And in some sense, now that I'm here, it's true. Because like Ravi said, take a chill pill. You'll make it. It'll be okay. If you really want to do this, it might take you longer. It might take you an extra year. But I promise you'll make it. So having said that, enjoy these 4 years. For me, at Davis, were the best 4 years of my life by far. I enjoyed every single day. I loved the people I lived with. I loved the people I hung out with, and I was very happy. And that's the most important thing. You'll get into med school, but you can't change these 4 years again. These 4 years are only there for 4 years. So enjoy them. When medical school comes, I promise you'll be busy and you'll have time to worry about medical school. But until then, worry about having fun, and you'll make it.
So our next question is, how often do you find yourself studying? And when not studying, how do you spend your free time?
I think I can speak for all of us when I say we find ourselves studying a lot. I think it depends on the person, but I spend a lot of time at the library studying, and so sometimes I'll find myself like 12 hours a day at the library. Now that doesn't mean I'm studying all the whole time, but you spend a lot of time with books. And so that's why study methods are so important, because you need to, any time that you spend not studying is awesome. I find myself just like watching TV every once in a while, maybe running, and then hanging out with friends. But I know that, like, for myself, one thing I would change is I would get better at time management so I could spend more time doing the stuff like that.
Yeah. I don't want to scare you guys off, but you're going to be studying a lot. It's going to be, it's a full-time job, more than a full-time job. You're working 2 full-time jobs. You're in medical school. But at the same time, it's a lot more enjoyable material. It's more applicable, especially second year when you start you're actually learning like real medicine. Like first year, all you pretty much know is like TCA cycle and like muscles and stuff. But second year, like, okay, I know if someone comes in with like certain symptoms, I know what they have or like what they probably have, how I would test for it, how I would treat it. So it's a lot more interesting, especially second year. So it gets better. And then time management, like I still have a life. Like I still, I hang out with my friends. So I watch TV, I still cook and clean, I don't live like a slob or anything. You definitely have to streamline stuff, like, so maybe I'll watch some TV while I'm cooking and then watch the rest of it, while I'm eating or things like that. You kind of have to double up, maybe I can't go, watch all the football games on Sunday, but if I really, really want to watch, like, I'm an Eagles fan, so if I really want to watch the Eagles, I just wake up earlier, study, and make sure I still, at least I can watch the second half at minimum. So you just have to time management and plan for things.
Yeah, like they said, you're studying a lot. I mean, closer to even test time, you're in the library or wherever you study 12 to 15 hours a day. So it really is like having 2 jobs. But I mean, when you're not studying, like going back to time management, you have to make time for yourself because you definitely need time for yourself. And when you're not studying, just do whatever you want. Do whatever makes you happy, whatever gets your mind off everything. And so when you're not studying, just don't have any of that in your mind. Just relax.
For me, it's funny because I don't think much has changed from undergrad to med school. Don't get me wrong, I'm probably studying twice or 3 times as much as I was in undergrad, but what was important to me in undergrad is still important to me now, and I still find time for it. So when I was in undergrad, friends and family were big to me. I always wanted to do something with friends and family, and I still do. I still have the time to meet my friends. I still have the time to meet my family. So it's not like I'm in a study cave until winter break and I only see people on Christmas. You have time to do stuff on weekends. You have time to do stuff on Fridays, but like it's been said, you need to make time for it. So if I know on Friday evening I'm going out, I need to make sure Monday to Thursday or Wednesday and Thursday I'm getting my studying done so that block that I'm not studying on Friday is okay. And go Niners. So I'm a Niners fan, if you guys haven't figured that out. I watch every game. I haven't missed a game yet. I don't plan on missing a game. So like I've said, whatever your priorities are, you make time for it. It's not like, wow, my life is gone for 2 years and I can't do anything for 2 years. You can do stuff. You just need to manage your time. And you'll learn to manage your time, even if you're not good at time management. You'll have to.
Yeah, and we made time to come out here, so we still survive. I'm in the middle of a block. I'm missing a weekend coming from Florida, but, you manage. You just, like, plan ahead. I worked harder this week than I usually would, and, I'll be good for it. I won't be, like, behind or anything.
So our next question is, what do you think is one of the biggest mistakes pre-med students make during the application process?
I think I would go back to what Ravi said earlier. Relax. You've done everything that you can at this point. It's not up to you, and in that way, it doesn't really, like, there's no point in stressing about it. Stressing about it's just not good for you. I have a couple of friends applying right now. That's always what I just tell them. They've finished their secondaries, and then they're constantly worrying. This is the time that you should be relaxing, having fun, and remembering whatever happens, if you, good or bad, it's not the end of the world.
Some things to add. Big thing is I see a lot of people they feel really rushed that they have to apply now, and you kind of rush your application. Don't do that. It's expensive. Apply when you are the strongest, when you are at your strongest. Don't rush your MCAT prep. Don't rush, all these things. Try to cram everything in. It's not the end of the world if you have to take some time off. I took a gap year, and I was better for it. It made me a much stronger applicant. And if I had applied a year before, I probably would have been a reapplicant. And it's always tougher because you're a little bit under more scrutiny of like what have you done since you reapplied. And there's nothing wrong with reapplying, but don't do it if you don't have to do it. Don't rush it. And then another thing is apply early. Apply the first day the application's open. You spent like 4 to 5 years of prepping yourself to apply to medical school. Don't put yourself at a disadvantage by applying later. Apply the first day so that you're because rolling admissions, so you want to be in the first round of interviews or early in the interview cycle, so that when you go to your interview, most of the class is open. You don't want to ideally you don't want to be interviewing late when there's, you know, limited spots. Like trying to apply early. You'll also take a lot of stress out of the process because you'll find out everything quicker and you won't be stressing out for like 8 months finding out if you got in or not.
Like I said in an earlier question, I don't think having a good score guarantees you an interview by any rate. So I think one of the things is if you are a strong applicant is there's a fine line between confidence and arrogance. So I think be humble and make sure that humility comes across in your application, and keep that mentality throughout your medical career. I think it's a very important skill to have, especially in this career. So yeah, humility I think is a very big thing to make sure you keep in that process.
To add on, don't feel like you have to fit this mold of a perfect applicant with high GPA, high MCAT score, lots of research, and lots of clinic, because everyone does that. I mean, these schools are getting 5,000-6,000 applications, and you can be pretty confident that a majority have that. They'll have good GPAs, they'll have good MCAT scores, they'll have clinic, and they'll have research. Instead, do what you want to do. Stop trying to tailor your activities to med school. Instead, do what you want to do, and then tailor that to your med school. Instead of finding, oh, okay, this is going to look good on my resume, so that's why I'm going to do it. Don't do things for that reason. Find it because you love it, and then you'll find a way to relate it back to medicine.
That being said, still make sure you do really well on your MCAT and your GPA. That's a very important part as well of the application.
I mean, I don't mean to undermine MCAT research or their important stuff. Don't think you can, just be a music major, do no science, anything, and you'll get into med school. They're very fundamental portions, but realize everyone is doing this too. So you want to do something that you love so you can set yourself apart a little bit. And that's what's going to really be your distincting factor if you're doing something different that other people haven't.
Hopefully, if you're applying to medical school, what you love would make you a good applicant.
So our next question is, was there anyone in particular that inspired you to pursue a career in medicine, and how did they influence you?
When I was younger, I actually went to quite a bit of issues. And so my personal physician at that time played a huge impact in making me want to be a doctor. And I think, honestly, the amount of good doctors that there are out there just serve as a huge inspiration for all of us. And I think it makes me want to be the best doctor I can be and have the impact that he had on me on other people.
For me is my older sister. She was like the first person in our family to go into the medical field. She's a dentist. So she kind of encouraged me to follow my interests and pursuits and pursue a higher education degree in medicine or something like that. She wanted me to be a dentist, but I was like, no, I want to be a real doctor. I always tease her about that. No, dentists are cool too. But no, she really inspired me. She was always a good role model for me, always making sure I did my homework when I was in high school and stuff. She always just made sure I always fulfilled my potential and led up to it and didn't get lazy. And so that's a big thing. If you can find someone who's demonstrated excellence in their field, and you just copy their work ethic. It doesn't have to be someone in the medical field or anything, but from your parents, even my parents, they always worked so hard. They were immigrant parents and they worked so hard, and I just saw their work ethic, and I'm like, they do all this hard work. I can't let that hard work go to waste. I need to fulfill my potential and things like that.
I was lucky. Most of my family members are physicians, so seeing them go through it, and especially my parents, growing up, seeing them getting the recognition from patients and colleagues and seeing how good of work they do was very inspirational. So that aspect was a big influence.
It's funny, I come from a little more opposite kind of family background. No one really in my family is a physician. It's more of engineers and businessmen. For me, it's a combination of my cousin and my mom. My cousin is a medical student. He's a total now fourth year student. And in some sense, I was always fascinated by how happy and contented he was. I was like, how can you be so happy in medical school? This doesn't make sense. This is supposed to be horrible, and you're supposed to be crying, and everything's supposed to be bad. How are you smiling? You have exams next week. But he was happy, and I was like, wow, wait, this is kind of cool. I need to look into this. So that's what prompted me to even look into the medical field and into osteopathic medicine, actually. And then in terms of the work ethic side, for me, it's definitely my mom. And I would say I still have it easier than what she had it. She was a first generation immigrant. The type of stuff she went through was so much harder than anything I'm going through. And for me, that's a daily reminder making medicine easy. It's like, yeah, stop cribbing, dude. You're not working hard to even put food on the table. You're just relaxing here. You have food in your freezer. Stop complaining. So for me, that's where I get my inspiration when I think things are going tough for me.
Okay, so this will be our last question of the panel. Do you have any general advice for students interested in pursuing a career in medicine?
Make sure it's what you want to do. I think a lot of people get caught up in the idea of it, but there's a lot more to medicine than meets the eye. Yeah.
Yeah, same thing. Make sure you want to do it. If you go into medical school for the wrong reasons, with the wrong motivation, or with those doubts, like, it's going to be tough. Because if you have that moment of hesitation or those doubts, or you're unsure once you're in medical school, you're not going to make it through, because you need to be passionate about it, and it needs to be something you want to do. And then, I know it's difficult. Like, how am I supposed to know if I really want to do this? So that's where it comes to getting those experiences. Go shadow different types of physicians. Don't just shadow one physician, and that physician's like the happiest physician in the world, and he has a cushy gig, and you think it's all rainbows and unicorns. And then don't just shadow like a physician who hates medicine. There's physicians that are unhappy. Shadow like a bunch of people. Get as much clinical experience as you can, so that you know what you're getting yourself into. And then think, like, why am I doing this? There's a bunch of reasons. And, a big thing is, like, financial stability. That's a valid reason. That's something you want to look for in your career. But don't just try and do it for the money. Like, I have so many loans. I think, like, Toro and Nova are, like, up there with some of the expensivest schools in the nation. You have a lot of student debt. You're paying that off for a while. Life as a resident is pretty miserable, and you're not getting paid a lot. So it's not, like, there's way more like financially incentive like careers out there. So don't do it just for the money. I know it's still important. You want to be stable. You're working on as hard, and it is a secure field, but that shouldn't be like your only and primary motivation for it.
I think going beyond, and very much so, make sure that's what you want to do. But I think you need to have an understanding of what the career actually is. You from the age of, let's say you're again traditional student like me, from the age of 30, whatever, young 30s on, you'll be an attending, but you're going to spend a number of years of your life as a medical student, a resident, possibly a fellow, and that's a very different lifestyle than like area of medicine than what an attending is. I mean, as a resident in internal medicine, you're going to spend like 80-90% of your time doing paperwork, not doing much medicine. So I think understanding of what the life is going to be for the early years of your medical career is a very important thing. So instead of just, not only do you shadow doctors in a place where you're going to see medical students and residents as well. So really get that understanding is an important part.
I would just say two main things. Number one, find your motivation, like they've said, and hold on to it. Because you will have moments in medical school where you'll wonder, what did I do? Is this really the right thing for me? And that's when looking back at that motivation can make the biggest difference. So make sure you have a tangible, a very real, you understand why you want to do this. Because like Ravi said, yeah, financial security is important. Yes, it's a noble profession. Yes, you get to do very cool things. But why do you really want to do it? And it's a difficult question to answer. Make sure you know that answer and make sure you hold on to it, because it'll come handy in medical school, in residency, and so forth. And the second thing I would say is super important, get a support system. Whether that's family, whether that's friends, whether that's a significant other, whatever it may be for you. Medical school is not something you do on your own. It's not a journey you will take on your own. It's a journey you will take with friends and with family, and they need to be there with you every step of the way. Whether it's support, whether it's encouragement, whether it's advice, whether it's whatever it is, you need that support system constantly. So find it. If you need to be near it, be near it. If you're okay Skyping or texting or talking over the phone, that's fine. But make sure it's accessible and you can have it when you need it.
Real quick to add to that, like keeping that motivation, remembering it. A good tip was like when I was studying for the MCAT, I started writing my personal statement at the same time. So every time I was like, I hate physics. Why am I doing this? I would be working on my personal statement. I'm like, okay, this is what I'm doing, and it kind of keep you motivated because there's gonna be times it's tough. You kind of lose track of why you're there, and you just need to remember that. So that was excellent advice.
And I think one more thing to add, if I can. Honestly, despite the work that we're putting in now, and despite the work that so many people have put in before us, I think the biggest thing that we remember and that should be remembered is it's such a privilege to be able to help people on a daily basis. And I think that's something that anyone applying to medical school should keep in mind.
So that will conclude our traditional medical student panel. So if we could give a round of applause to our panelists, please.